2601. My name is Tatenda and I am from TutorVollt. Today we'll be doing assignment 1 and providing guidelines in answering assignment 1 and CRW2601. What this video will not do though is provide an answer. However, it will provide guidelines in answering the questions. So let's jump right into it. So the question 1 for assignment 1 is the following. During the COVID-19 lockdown period, X and his wife Y have a terrible argument. X repeatedly hits his wife over the head with a blunt object. She eventually collapses and loses consciousness. Y's friend only discovers her lying on the kitchen floor the following morning and takes her to the hospital. Because the hospital is full, she's only taken to a ward after 5 hours. She is only examined the next day for the first time by the doctor. The doctor is very busy and does not make a proper diagnosis. Y receives no medical treatment whatsoever and dies the same night. X is charged with murder of Y. The report of the pathologist who did the autopsy brings to light that Y had died from the bleeding in the brain. The pathologist testifies that Y might have possibly have lived if she had received proper medical treatment at an earlier stage. He is of the opinion that an intrinsically dangerous wound was administered to her from which she would most probably have died without medical intervention. Discuss the following questions which relate to the requirement of causation. Let's just take that up one more time, paying attention to details, paying attention to the facts. Let's go. During the COVID-19 lockdown period, X and his wife have a terrible argument. X repeatedly hits his wife over the head with a blunt object. That's the first point. She eventually collapses and loses consciousness. Y's friend only discovers her lying on the kitchen floor the following morning and takes her to the hospital. Because the hospital is full, she's only taken to a ward after 5 hours. She's only examined the next day for the first time by a doctor. The doctor is very busy and does not make a proper diagnosis. Y receives no medical treatment whatsoever and dies the same night. X is charged with murder of Y. The report of the pathologist who did the autopsy brings to light that Y has died from bleeding in the brain. The pathologist testifies that Y might possibly have lived if she had received proper medical care at an earlier stage. He is of the opinion that an intrinsically dangerous wound was administered to her from which she would most probably have died without medical intervention. Discuss the following questions which relate to causation. So the great part about this is that already we know what we're dealing with in this assignment. We don't have to deduce it ourselves, and we're dealing with causation, and that is study unit 4. So all of this question is causation, so we are only concentrating on studying unit 4. So the first part 1 says, is X the factual cause of Y's death? Explain for 2 marks. Is X the factual cause of Y's death? So, as we say, this is study unit 4. We already discussed this and did this in study unit 4. So, when we look at causation, before we look at whether it is the factual cause, let's just remind ourselves what causation is. So the issue of causation, which is stated under 4.3.2 in our study guides, says that, so in materially defined crimes, there's always a question of causal link between the conduct and prohibited results. So in this, they ask, did X conduct result in Y's death? So that is basically what causation is about. Did X conduct result in Y's death? Is there a causal link between conduct and prohibited result? So that basically is what is causation. So let us look at the principles applied in determining causation. So there are two requirements, as you probably most probably remember, that it must be clear that X act was the factual cause of Y's death, and secondly, it must be clear that X act was the legal cause of Y's death. So our first question requires us to explain and answer the question: is X act a factual causation of Y's death? So let us look at what factual causation is in order for us to determine what is if if Y's X act is actually the factual cause. So factual cause, as you probably remember, it has that fancy Latin term, conditio sine qua non. That is what factual causation is. So conditio sine qua non, if you still remember from our study unit 4, I'd say it literally means a condition antecedent without which not the prohibited act would not have occurred. So put simply, this means that what happened would not have happened if X act had not occurred, right? So we're basically saying without X acting in a certain way, the prohibited result, or which is in this case, the death of Y would have not happened. So that is what we mean. If X had not done this, Y would have not died. So an act is conditio sine qua non for a situation of the act can't be thought away without the situation disappearing at the same time. So let's take that again. An act is a conditio sine qua non for a situation of the act can't be thought away without the situation disappearing at the same time. But for the occurrence of the act, the prohibited condition would not have happened. Right. So this is basically what conditio sine qua non means, factual causation. So in Daniels, when we're looking at court cases, the appeal court decided that factual causation is determined on the basis of the conditio sine qua non theory, right? So we have discussed now what factual cause is. We said a situation can't be thought away without the situation disappearing at the same time. The situation of the act can't be thought away with the situation without the situation disappearing at the same time. Put simply, what would have happened if X act had not occurred? So now we go to our question 1. Is X act the factual cause of Y's death? So in order to answer this, let us look at our facts. This is a 2-mark question. So basically you're going to have to provide obviously, is X the factual cause of Y's death? It's either yes or no, but yes or no is not enough because then they want the explanation. So you have to give, for the first part, you have to give a yes or no answer and then explain why you say yes or no. But let us look at the facts of the question. So X repeatedly hits his wife over the head with a blunt object. She eventually collapses and loses consciousness. And then ultimately, as we read, we realize that she dies, and then the pathologist testifies that an intrinsically dangerous wound was administered to her from which she would most probably have died without medical intervention. So in this case, remember we said that an act is conditio sine qua non for a situation of the act can't be thought away without the situation disappearing at the same time. So for a moment, let us just put this in mentally and say, if X, so we're saying that if we cannot think about X act if we think about X act and the prohibited result doesn't go away at the same time, or goes away at the same time, then that is a conditio sine qua non. So in this case, if X had not repeatedly hit, if X had not repeatedly hit Y, would Y be dead? So that is it. If X had not repeatedly hit Y, would Y be dead? Would Y have succumbed to, or would Y have a wound that needed medical attention? Would she have ended up in the hospital, etc.? So now we go back to the facts of the case. So let us think about it. If Y if Y had not been repeatedly beaten by X, would she have ended up in hospital? If X had not beaten up Y, would she have ended up in hospital? So do you see now that we cannot, what X did, if we think about it, if he did it, what X did, if X um, had not done it, would Y be still in hospital? So the answer that we're looking for is, so you have to you have to answer on your own, like saying that if X act if X had not beaten Y, would Y have been in the hospital? Would Y have sustained that wound that would have led her into the hospital? Remember in study unit 4 that we said that X wanted to kill Y and Y ran into the building that Z, who had no connection with X and Y, had planted a bomb in it. And then when X tries to shoot Y, Y panics and runs into that building and she is blown up. And remember what we said in that illustration? We say that if X had not pointed a gun at Y, Y would have not have a reason to flee into the building and be blown out by the bomb that had been set up by Z. So we were saying that it is a factual causation. If X had not pointed the gun to Y would have never in the first place had any reason to run into that building in the first place. So in this situation, if X had not beaten up his wife, Y would have never sustained that head injury, which would have led her to go into the hospital, etc. So in this case, we can deduce that X is the factual cause of Y's death. Right. So that is the first part of the assignment to determine is X the factual cause of Y's death, is X conditio sine qua non of Y's death. Then we have deduced that we have deduced that an act is a conditio sine qua non for a situation of the act can't be thought away without the situation disappearing at the same time. So we cannot think away this X act without the situation disappearing at the same time. So our part one, X is the factual cause of Y's death. Then we go on to the longer part of the assignment, and this is part two. So as we already noted before we started with a brief introduction, that we have we have factual causation, and then we have legal causation, right? And if you still remember from our notes, we said that factual causation is a bit too broad. We would take it back to Adam and Eve hold everyone accountable. So that is why we also need to qualify causation in terms of legal causation. So 2 says is X act also the legal cause of Y's death. Motivate your answer with the reference to relevant authority. So when answering essay type of question, there's what stages that you need to do that so that you provide a concise answer. So the first thing that you have to do is identify the legal question. What is the legal question in the scenario, right? So what is the legal question? The legal question or question is is X act also the legal cause of Y's death? So that is our question, which is really obvious because it's stated. And then the second thing that we have to do after this, after of course we've identified our question, is recite the law or state the legal principles behind legal causation. So in this part of the question, you're basically reciting the legal rules or the principles that pertain or that surround legal cause, right? So a good